he's saying, wow, this is really strange. We were running exercises where there was terrorists on planes with bombs. It was very similar to what actually happened. He didn't put it together. This is how you can get away with this, because you're tying up the whole security system, because when they hear a real report, they think, well, that's part of the exercise. Just ignore it. So it throws the whole military off. By the time they figure out what's happening, it's too late.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, just so folks know, I looked at the details on the numbers of this, and Flight 11 was in the air, controllers had been notified that it was hijacked 22 minutes before hitting the North Tower. And,
yeah, they knew it was hijacked.
Then Flight 175 that hit the South Tower was 16 more minutes. So the total number of minutes was 38 minutes. It doesn't take but like about a minute or so to get jets in the air.
Right, right. They knew these were hijacked, but you got to remember there's
fighter jets.
There's several different exercises running. So when the first reports come in, one commander might think, well, there's other exercises. What's he supposed to do? You know, his first reaction is, you know, these things don't happen very often. So his first reaction is it's an exercise. By the time they figure it out, it's too late. So this is how you can get this done without a lot of people knowing about it.
You confuse them with that, and so that by the time they realize this is really happening, too much time has elapsed for them to
do anything.
To get a plane there, a fighter jet there, to try to distract them, to try to pull them away. Question from our cameraman.
Yeah, could it not be that the bad guys who they're working for, okay, could they not have gotten that information? Well, there's going to be exercise. It would be a good time to do it. Well, the military's planning to have an emergency exercise.
So he's asking if the bad guys would have possibly wanted to capitalize on the fact that since they knew there were exercises.
Now, this is a possibility, but that means they're looking at all the exercises and then planning an attack around it?
Or could it have been the...
See, do you see how hard that would be? That would be okay for maybe like the London train bombing. But here you've got an attack at the Pentagon, you've got an attack in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. How often you're looking over all the exercises? It's still, that could happen, but it helps even better when somebody is in the military suggesting the exercises.
Since they may have had foreknowledge of this planned attack.
They had to.
And of course, in David Ray Griffin's book, the other author who is from Santa Barbara that I'm hoping to get on the program, his book, The 911 Commission Report, Omissions and Distortions, he talks about the fact that FBI agents reported foreknowledge of an attack planned on 9/11, and they didn't get anyone to listen to them. They even came to the commission and testified at the commission, and it wasn't in the report.
Well, this is a good point, because one of the reactions I get from people is, well, if this were true, someone would talk about it.
And they have been.
Well, duh. I mean, what do you think the book's about? And then you got FBI people talking about it. We are talking about it, but who reports it? Does KEYT? Does the news press? Does anybody? No, they ignore us.
I do.
They ignore us, and then you get this, well, if people would talk. Well, they are talking, and they have been talking.
And it is growing, and the word is getting out. So we just... Okay, we have a couple of minutes left. Word is getting out. We are making some progress here. Another thing is the put options. I want to real quickly, in 30 seconds, can you address the put options that still have not been...
Right. Just before the attack, the few business days before this attack, people started putting, mysterious people, they won't tell us who, started betting that United Airlines stock and American Airlines and then Morgan Stanley, who has a lot of floors in these buildings, and some others, that their stock would drop.
World Trade Center.
Yeah, and they bet that the stocks would drop in price, and they made a lot of money from this. And some of them didn't even pick up their money. And so immediately people think, well, who were they? They must have known. And so immediately you see the Chicago Board of Exchanges and the Security and Exchange Commission, and in Japan and in Europe,
stonewalled it.
They all said first, we're going to investigate.
But then they didn't.
Someone stopped it.
And the 911 Commission didn't even address it. There's so many. That's the reason why David Ray Griffin calls his book Omissions and Distortions, because there's so much omitted that we needed to hear about. So if we were to just touch on one part as we're running out of time on the theory behind all this.
Well, see, trying to figure out why people do this. These crimes are so big. You know, it's when you look back at like smaller organized crime, like Al Capone, and you start saying, why would they do this? Why would they do that? You can't always understand why. All you can say is when you look at a lot of these attacks, like the Northwoods document.
That's what I'd like to talk just quickly about that.
I have a little bit of that in the.
I know, because there are people out there still, after we've talked about all this, and they're thinking, this is so implausible.
But in 1962, there was a document written. It's now been declassified, and this section is called Pretext to Justify U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba. They wanted to attack, some people, not all, some people wanted to attack Cuba, and they're thinking, how can we attack Cuba? Not enough people want to.
So this was when Kennedy was president, before he was assassinated?
And some people wanted to attack them.
This was called the Northwood document?
That's what yes, and now we refer to it as the Northwood document. And so they're thinking, how can we get people to want
to support an attack on Cuba?
And it has to be the military, the government, the people. And so one of their options, they had a whole bunch of these options. They had things like we could blow up a ship in Guantanamo Bay and then blame Cuba for it. But the one that's interesting is we could blow up a drone. Or we could have a Cuban aircraft, something that looks like a Cuban aircraft attack a civilian airliner. But you see, what they're doing is they're trying to figure out how can we fake something, make it look like Cuba is attacking us, and then we can justify war. What is 9/11? The Arabs attack us. Now we have to go over there and kill them.
So it's real similar to the Northwood document, which was back in 1962, that actually said in print, suggested we could, if we wanted to, do a simulated...
Yeah, because it's difficult to get people to support a war.
A simulated aircraft-involved scenario in which we could make it look like Cuba was...
Right. In order to start a war, you've got to get people mad. They don't just do it for fun. Nobody wants to go to a war.
So this is not a new idea, is what I'm getting at.
It's not a new idea. And in fact, the Northwoods document is not even the first time a government has done this. And they said even Hitler did this. They said that Reichstag fire, somebody burned that on purpose. Then he said, oh, the communists did it.
All right.
This is a common technique.
I want to have you back on the show again. As I said, I hope I can get David Ray Griffin eventually. Everybody keep your fingers crossed. Anybody having questions, we're going to have Eric back on the show in the not-too-distant future. Email me with your questions, and I will ask him those questions on the next installment that we have Eric on, if you will come back.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work, Eric. You're a true patriot. You really are, and quite a leader. It's what we need right now, more people like you.
We need more people talking about it,
too. And thank you for watching. I know this has been difficult to watch, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, where the fuck? What did we do? We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Detonated.
They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it's folded down on itself, and it is not...
10 o'clock Eastern Time this morning, just collapsing on itself. This is a place where thousands of people work. We have no idea what caused this. If you wish to bring... anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.